Hey there, welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show, where you're going to have the opportunity to listen to and learn from everyday entrepreneurs.
Welcome to the Jeff and Heidi Show. Today it is actually just Jeff. Hopefully we'll be able to get Heidi joining us right away here. But I want to welcome Ryan Wynder, the Vegas therapist. I'm excited to talk to Ryan today and have a great conversation and let you learn some things about him. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So a little history. Ryan's in Vegas. I'm in Arizona. We both grew up in Southern Alberta. I grew up with his wife, actually. And so we have known each other pretty much all our lives. And it's been really cool to be able to see the things he's done and is doing. And I just thought it'd be awesome to get him on here and share that story, but also share what he's doing so others could follow him and see what he's doing. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background and what you're doing?
Okay. Like just from the start, like where I grew up, like that kind of thing, or even just like more,
Anywhere
more
from, where your brother gets shot, whatever, something like that.
Well, that's that's a long history, but yes. So if you want to go to YouTube and check out my video on my just like how to pick a good therapist, there's the story of my brother getting shot and how that all went down and kind of shaped, I guess, maybe a part of kind of who I am today as far as just dealing with, tragedy and difficult things in a calm and collected way. But yeah, I grew up in a small town, a small farming community. I was listening to like your episode with the Baker girl. Where was she from?
Rosemary.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, she sounds like she's describing Hill Spring, but I don't know who she is. Because it was like a town of 300 people. I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. So anyway, so yeah, my town about the same, 300 people. Small farming community. But I think for me though, I hated that life. I'll just be honest. I mean, I appreciate the things that it taught me as far as work and stuff like that. But I think my entire life was dedicated towards is how I'm not going to be a farmer, and how that's not going to be my way of living. So, I mean, even though, farmers can make a good living, it just wasn't for me. So, I always kind of just, strive for, I guess in my mind, what were better things or things that would be just different. And so, but again, like psychology was always something that I was interested in, and just kind of like the way people thought and why they did the things they did. And that just always was something that I was curious about. And so as I kind of moved through school and different things like that, that always kind of was in the back of my mind. The problem was I didn't really know anybody who had any careers in psychology. So it was kind of like, I don't really know what to do with that. And as I, got into university, I mean, I started taking some psychology classes, and I thought, okay, well, how this is my major, but again, it was still kind of like, what do you do with that? So a lot of it was just kind of figuring out for myself and trying to find a career path. And at some point I just was like, okay, maybe I could do this counseling thing. It sounds, like that's, I guess, the best place for it. But then I knew I'd have to kind of go on and do more than just my undergrad. So started applying to schools, in my senior year of university, and got some interviews at different places. And Las Vegas offered me an interview, and they accepted me. And so then we made the move to Vegas. And then I guess that part, as far as being in Vegas and kind of setting up camp here and being able to establish a life here, that part's all been history. Now, as far as everything else that came along with that, and just kind of like having the experience and being able to, develop. I think the one thing that I've really enjoyed about being in Vegas, as far as like the work that I do, is that I've just been able to work with so many different types of clients. And I feel like the experience that's given me has just really helped me, not only as a therapist, but kind of moving forward to what I'm doing now with the podcast, is that I don't feel like there's an area of anything in particular that I don't have some experience with, or that I can't share with other people. But just kind of fast forwarding to the podcast that I just started, it's actually been a year since I started my own podcast. And, one of the things that got me going with that was I did Russell Brunson's ClickFunnels Challenge, the one funnel away. I still have not done a funnel, but but the challenge part I liked, and I liked what he did. And in there, he just said, you know, you need to find your voice. You need to find a way to express yourself, whether it's a podcast or writing or something. And actually, about 3 months before that, I started to try to write a book. And I was like, this is terrible. I cannot write a book. I mean, I probably hopefully can, but I was like, the way I was going about it or whatever, I was like, this is just going to be pain. So I'm like, well, I think I can do a podcast. And so, you know, Russell made the challenge to do a podcast and or some type of thing, or some, you know, have some type of medium for your voice. And so I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to just, and I just jumped in and I just started doing the podcast, and it's been, you know, it's been great just as far as another medium to kind of get my voice out there and to have influence with other people that, you know, I mean, obviously you're limited as a therapist. You can only have one person in your office at a time. And so, you know, you don't always have a big sphere of influence that you can reach. Right. So the podcast has been a way to expand that, and it's been great. So anyway, hopefully that answered some of your questions. But
for sure, absolutely. And you know, the one funnel away challenge, that's actually something that I really believe in. Is that is, I tell a lot of people, you know, if you're never gonna create a funnel, still take it. It's the greatest marketing course I've been through, and I've got it in the link in my bio, a link to it for that purpose, because I refer people to it all the time. I think it's great, and I like that also when he tells you to find your voice. The thing I always remember about that part is, you know what, go ahead and start. No one's going to be listening to you your first few episodes anyway. So go ahead and start, and then you're going to be able to find it.
Well, and I think for me too, the thing that really got me over the part was like when he said, not only do you want to find your voice, but he said, don't worry about sucking. And it's like, cause you might suck at first. Right. And it's just like, so you just kind of have to get over that part of it and not worry about it. And I've gone back and listened to my first episode a couple of times. I'm like, oh my heck, this is terrible. But part of the terribleness was like, I didn't have a mic at first. I just used my phone. And so you could hear papers like clamoring around and different things like that. So, but hey, it was a start, and it got me going on it, and it's been going ever since. So I think that's the bigger part of that challenge, is just to do something and to kind of get out of your comfort zone and to be able to push yourself in a different way. So.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one of the things that I was interested about your story too, is, you know, for a therapist, you've really got an entrepreneurial side. You know, there's probably not a lot of therapists that take the one funnel away challenge or go to Funnel Hacker Live and those sort of things. Talk a little bit about that side, the entrepreneurial side of you, I guess.
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurial side of me is a little bit like it's kind of it is a little bit, it's definitely there. It's a little bit reserved from the standpoint of like, I still have a hard time with it, but I've just been able to find ways to push myself. And I think part of it is it is still based in what I do, because I think it's like I still want to, you know, it's more of this idea of like wanting to reach more people. But I think in order to do that, you have to create a market for yourself that allows for that. And the only way to really do that is through like these entrepreneurial kind of methods, right? I mean, you can't just like sit back. I mean, I can have a full schedule all I want. I mean, that doesn't really, I mean, I wouldn't say that doesn't take a lot of work. I think you have to still be a good therapist to have a full schedule. But I mean, with insurances and different things like that, I know a lot of people that are busy as a therapist, they aren't necessarily, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good therapist. So I think, like you said, that entrepreneurial part of it for me is just like also wanting to be better and to kind of be the best at what you're doing. And so that pushes you, I think, to kind of get outside of the norm as far as what maybe therapists do, and to find and to do that again, I guess to be the best and to kind of want a greater sense of success. You have to find ways to get outside of, I guess, just that bubble or that norm that is just like, hey, sitting in an office and talking to people. Because like, say, for example, like going back to the book or going back to writing a book, I was terrible at it at first, but then once I started doing the podcast, I also realized like, oh my gosh, I've got transcript after transcript as far as of things that I could now turn into a book. And that's a much easier way to write a book. You know, rather than the way I was doing it before, whereas I was just trying to sit down and start to write from like chapter 1 on. That was just like terrible. And, but just stuff like that, I think, that desire to kind of want to be better, to create more things. Like I said, I'm not sure exactly where it comes from, but I think it really just comes from just wanting to be better. And in order to be better, you have to find your way through some of this entrepreneurial stuff in order to make that happen. So it's, like I said, it's not always comfortable for me, but it's been enjoyable. And I think, like you said, after going to things like, ClickFunnels Live and stuff like that, I mean, you see like, how it can be done in ways that you can increase your business and different things like that again, maybe other therapists don't see is because they're not looking at it from that perspective. So.
Right. So is the book still in the works, or what's the plans there?
Well, the plan will be, like I said, it's kind of in the works without being in the works, because like I said, like I'm pretty, I don't want to say, I guess I'm pretty detailed about my podcast. And so I create scripts for a lot of them. So I just look at that as like, again, and you can always turn them into, you can always record them into context too, or into verbiage or whatever. So I'm looking at it more from that perspective of like, hey, let me get, into the podcast a little bit more. Let me get some more content. And then I can take some of that and then turn it into a book, rather than, than just kind of, like I said, sitting through and trying to write chapter 1 through chapter 20 or whatever. So.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well,
so
I want to
I
go
don't
into
have a release date or anything like that.
Okay. I do want to go into the podcast a little more and talk about that, but also, I mean, I know Vegas is more than what we see on the strip, but to a lot of us, Vegas is the strip. And so thinking Vegas therapist, you've got to have some great stories to share. What's your favorite story? Of course, client confidentiality. We don't want names and birth date and all that, but share something with us that our listeners would enjoy.
Well, there's definitely a lot out there. I mean, on my memoir podcast, you poked fun at me for this one. My Will Smith doppelganger that was like messing with me. And the thing about that one that's so funny is like, that's so interesting, is just because I was such a new therapist that you're kind of like, you don't really know, like you're just kind of getting a feel for it. And then here's this client that's kind of like whispering things to you, and you're like, is he whispering things to me? Like, I think he's saying he wants to hold me or hug me or different things like that. And I'm like, and in your mind, you're just like, this can't be happening. This isn't real. Like, he's not really saying those things. And then I go on to confront him about if he's like trying, if he's saying that he wants to hold me or hug me or whatever. And then next thing you know, he stands up, and he's this big African-American guy. Like I said, he looks exactly like Will Smith. And he starts coming towards me like with his arms open, and he's going to give me this big hug. And I just like bolt out of there, and I'm like, okay, it's time. The session is done. It's time to go. But so that's a classic one. But I think again, what's interesting, I actually have an episode coming out next week with an adult film star, and she's been a client for a little while. And I think one of the things, and actually the episode's going to be called, porn stars are people. Now, whether you agree with what they do or you don't agree with what they do, I think just kind of seeing the other side of that and seeing them as people and kind of their struggles and what they go through, and, and the things about them. I mean, there's stuff like that you see where people are just like, they're going through daily struggles like you and I, and they're trying to deal with them. And this, person, like she shares in the episode, she goes to 12-step programs. She does things to try to help herself be better. So I think, stereotypically wise, we see certain things, and I guess just being in Vegas, you kind of also see the other side of it, right? Like, I mean, even like say from a standpoint of like gambling or different things like that, people might look at it and it's like, oh, that's so great, or that's so wonderful. But then we see the other side of it, where it's like you see people, lose their house, or they lose their whatever, they lose their savings because they can't stop gambling, or, things of that nature. So I think that's the other part of Vegas. And not that that's a predominant part. Again, I mean, some of those people that do that, they might be, visitors, but I mean, you do have people that live here, they get caught up in that life too. And then you end up dealing with the other side of it, where again, like they've they've lost their families or their businesses or their different things because they can't manage those addictions in a very effective way, I guess. So yeah, I guess that's the other part too. Like you get to see those things.
And before we move on from that, I guess that's one thing. Just get your thoughts on this. Is I think there's probably a lot of people that deal with things like that, addictions, gambling, whatever it might be, pornography, whatever, that don't know where to turn to, and whether it's they just don't know, they feel ashamed, whatever it might be. What would you say to someone that's listening that might be in that spot that, how do they contact a therapist? How do they make that move?
Well, I mean, the great thing about the contact part is I think anytime, I mean, there's definitely easy ways. I mean, Psychology Today as a reference, you can find people that are in your area. I mean, the other thing that's good about what I've been trying to do too, and even with the podcast, is that, I mean, and with even what we're doing, we're having a video call right now. So, I mean, that's opened up therapy as well for other people that you don't necessarily have to be in the same place or the same state. I've had a lot of sessions now with people from back home, back in Canada, that have reached out because they've heard the podcast and they wanted to, have some more in-depth, sessions or whatever, just on their own. But I think the biggest thing is that, people, I think, still see it as a weakness, and they struggle with that idea of like feeling weak because they have to reach out and ask somebody for help. And like I say, I don't really, I mean, maybe it's easy for me to say, but I see it as a strength. I mean, to be able to reach out and ask for that help, because it really does take a lot for you to sit on the other side of somebody that you don't know and be able to talk about, what you're struggling with and what your challenges are and what, and maybe even just what you've lost in your life or whatever it may be. I mean, that is a hard thing. And so when people look at it as a weakness, I just wish they could kind of get that part out of their head, because it really isn't a weakness. It really is more of a strength because of what it takes to be able to sit down across from somebody and talk to them about your story. So I think whether it's reaching out to somebody like me or, I mean, as far as what I can offer you or somebody locally or whatever it might be, I mean, there's definitely tons of options out there as far as, people. It's just more of a matter of, I think, getting over that stigma or that hesitation that I'm doing something that's weak, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about the podcast. Tell us, what has it done for you in your practice? Where do you see it going, and just how you feel about everything with that?
And kind of tying that into back to the whole entrepreneurial side is, I think one of the things that I've really been focused on the last, especially the last 6 months, is really more about the idea of like creating a brand, right? Like when you think of something that, stands out for you or whatever, whether it's, again, like something like ClickFunnels or whatever, like that's a brand that has something behind it. You kind of know and understand that. So with the Vegas Therapist, which I was surprised really that website was still available when I went to get it. I thought that would be one that would be picked up. So it was funny. My brother-in-law, Brent, he texted me one day and he's like, "Do you not have the website for the Vegas Therapist?" I'm like, "No, I didn't even think about it. I thought it would be gone. I didn't even think that it would be available." He's like, "Well, I have it in my cart right now and I'm going to sell it to you." or if you don't buy it right now, he's like, "I'm going to sell it to you for twice of what it's worth," or whatever. I'm like, "Okay, I'll go buy it right now." But I think for me, so getting back to the idea of the brand, is like, it's more about trying to create a brand of kind of like, this is who I am. So it's almost like embracing the idea of like, you're the Vegas Therapist. Like, this is who you are. This is like, when we think about, when people think about their challenges or difficulties, like, oh, I could turn to the Vegas Therapist. Like that person, he's kind of has that, that essence to you. So so in order to create the brand, I think you have to have these different avenues for people to see you as being the expert. So whether it's, the podcast, or whether it's my Facebook page, putting out videos, putting out, things that people can like draw from, so that they kind of see you as a trusted source, right? And then when it comes time, and that's the thing too, like with some things, and especially I think for me, we have to be able to be patient, because sometimes it's just sowing seeds, right? Sometimes you don't know what, what you put out there. Maybe nobody likes it on Facebook, maybe nobody comments on it, but it doesn't mean it's not seen. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have an impact. It doesn't mean that somebody later on won't go back and say, hey, I remember when he posted that thing, and maybe I can go look at it, or maybe, I'd like to talk to him more about it. And so I think from that standpoint, like I said, trying to create a brand, the podcast is a big part of that, and just trying to get people that feeling of like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. And so if I am in a moment where I feel like I could use some extra help, I know I could reach out to him, and here's the different ways I can reach out to him. I try to be open to people on Facebook. If they ask me questions, I don't want to be like, hey, I'm only going to answer that if you pay me or whatever. Like, I'm pretty available as far as like answering stuff. I mean, obviously, that has a limit to it, but I'm not going to like just not answer your questions and stuff like that. But again, I think it's just about trying to create a brand of who you are and something that people can trust in.
Right. Okay.
Hopefully I'm answering your questions. I don't.
No,
I,
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So what are you on right now? How many podcasts have you done?
So the one I'm about to release will be episode 38. So originally I tried to kind of do one weekly, but then the thing that I found is that I also don't want to like not give like a good episode per se. Like I don't want to just throw stuff out there just for the sake of throwing stuff out there. So yeah. I do want to have them be, like have value. And so then, like some months I'd maybe only get 2 out, some I'll get 3. So it's just kind of vary just depending on the, on the month and kind of what, obviously what I have going on with my own practice and stuff, but I try to at least do 2 or 3 a month, but I definitely want them to be quality. So I don't want them to just kind of like be, thrown out there just to be out there.
Right. And how do you typically find your guests for it, and which has been your favorite episode? I'll tell you mine. My favorite was with Amber and Colette. I thought that was awesome.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, no, that was a good one. That one actually came about because of ClickFunnels. I had the opportunity to kind of be talking with Colette, and she, I said, hey, like, would you, I just asked her, and obviously I had the inside track on Amber. She was easy to corral, but well, maybe not easy, but she was willing to do it. But yeah, that was, I enjoyed that one just from the stand. I think that's the thing too. Like I've had to not worry about, like, not every episode's going to be for everybody, and even with that one, like I had some feedback on that one. It's like people, that are in that world, they really appreciated hearing that they're wives of entrepreneurs. I mean, again, I still thought there was good relationship advice in there for everybody, but sometimes certain episodes just speak to other people. And or certain people, I guess. But as far as like choosing guests, I think sometimes it's just been like, I just have an idea. And if there happens to be a guest for that I have in mind, then I try to, see if they'd be willing to come on and talk about it. Sometimes it will just be like, oh yeah, that person would make a good guest, and just try to make it into an episode or whatever. So there's not always like a rhyme or reason. It's just more of like, sometimes it's just timing and availability and just trying to, make something happen with people. I think actually, I mean, I know it's maybe it's like self-centered, but my favorite episode is the one with my brothers. I mean, I really like that one. That actually, I don't know, maybe it's just because we, all promote it. That one has actually had the most listens per se. And actually I got a lot of feedback on that one, just from people just that were, grateful about sharing that story. But I think it was just like, it was a good thing just to be real with people and recognize that, hey, again, we all go through stuff, and there was so many people that reached out, even like people that I went to high school with, and they were like, I didn't know anything like that. Like, you obviously kept that pretty close to the vest. And it's just like, just was what it was, for us, it was just our life, just kind of what we dealt with, but, and so, but yeah, a lot of people really appreciate that one. So I really like doing that one with them and giving them an opportunity to kind of share their story. I liked Allison's. Especially a lot of women have really liked hers just because they've been able, if they've been in a bad relationship, that's been something that they've appreciated hearing, and just how she was able to, get out of that difficult relationship. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate this. Loved having this conversation. And I want people to be able to find your podcast, find your services, everything. So go ahead and share that. We'll obviously post it in the show notes and stuff, but
okay.
We want everyone to be able to find this because you've got some great stuff going.
Thanks. Yeah, so you can either, obviously the podcast, the Vegas Therapist Podcast, it's on really it's on iTunes, it's on Anchor, it's on Spotify, it's on Google. So it's really should be on any form. I've also been recently posting my videos. I've been starting to record too. So those are on YouTube as well. If you want to check out the YouTube channel is The Vegas Therapist. And then you can follow me on Instagram at The Vegas Therapist as well. And then trying to think. Oh, I do have that Facebook group, the Ryan Wynder, the Vegas Therapist Podcast group. And I think and then my website, thevegasTherapist.com. So if you want to check out my services and see what I have to offer there, that's another place you can find me. So yeah, I think that's it.
Awesome. And yeah, the Vegas Therapist Podcast, he has some incredible episodes. So go listen to those. You'll really enjoy it. And thank you. I appreciate you spending the time with me today.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Thanks.
All right.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Ryan, for being on that episode. Go visit Ryan's website, The Vegas Therapist. Go follow his social media sites and definitely go check out his podcast. He's got some incredible interviews on there that I know you'll enjoy. The next couple slides, I'm going to share my contact information, Ryan's contact information, and Heidi's contact information. We'd love to have you guys follow us. One other thing I just want to talk about briefly. Usually these episodes get recorded and they're not put out for a while. This one's actually going to get published right away. And it's right in the middle of everything we're dealing with right now with coronavirus. And I've noticed a lot of people in the panic mode, in the uncertainty mode, which is definitely the case. There is a lot of uncertainty and unknowns right now with everyone. But one of the things that I want to do is I'm putting together a training video series right now that will be released shortly that's going to discuss some of the things that you need to do on a personal level, on a business level, to make sure that as we come out of this, that you can be on the front of the curve, because things are going to get back to normal. There are going to be a lot of opportunities coming out of this, but you need the right mindset, you need the right training, and we're going to put this together in this free video series. So go to jeffheggie.com, and right at the top, there's going to be a sign up that all I need is your name and email address. And as soon as that video series is done, I will get it out to you and we will get you on the right foot going forward. So thanks again for being with us, and make sure to go follow us on everything that follows on these next few screens, and have a great day. Thanks.